Thank you, Lauren, for the introduction. At this point in the project, we're going to discuss the golden circle, and this is a concept that was introduced by Simon Sinek. And the purpose of the golden circle is for companies or even individuals, for that matter, to discover your why. And Simon describes your why as your purpose or your cause or belief that inspires you to do what you do. So for a company, it's not so much just about like making a product or a service. It's about like, why do you make that product or service? He used the example of Apple, and their why is to think differently. It's not necessarily to just make computers or consumer products for people. Like, that has no purpose. It has no meaning. It's like, where think differently is something that changes the way people convey the company. So we wanted to discover this for Untappd itself. Untappd uses the tagline of drink socially, and it kind of starts to lead you into the direction of what their why is, but we want to take it a little bit deeper. The idea of the why for us is that moment of, like, sharing a beer with somebody, whether it's in person or online or through any of the tools that Untappd has developed, but it's sharing a moment with somebody through beer. So we determined our why is connecting people through beer. That was our official why. The how of how Untappd does this is they promote the discovery and sharing a beer with friends, family, and new connections. Again, it's all about the people and the manner in which they connect. And the what is they've developed this web-based platform. And the web-based platform allows you to basically take sharing beer, with someone locally now to a national level. If you're sitting in your home in New Jersey, you can now share a beer with friends that moved away to Colorado. And, you can share what you're drinking that night and new beers that you found. You can have a conversation back and forth. This is the platform that Untappd has developed, and it all leads back to this why, connecting people through beer. In this next portion of the project, we utilized IDEO's Ways to Grow matrix, and IDEO has identified this matrix as a way for project teams to determine their path of innovation. And so we use this for Untappd to start, putting together ideas of like how we could utilize the matrix in the 4 quadrants: adapt, manage, extend, create. And as we researched Untappd and kind of found some opportunities and gaps in service, we start plugging away these ideas. We use this as direction for the rest of the project because we've basically determined that we wanted to stay within the extend and manage quadrants, because we felt that Untappd still had a lot of room to grow, and that there was just some issues more from like generating revenue and generating deeper relationships with the breweries as their partners. So this was the inspiration for the rest of the project. In this next section of the project, the team explored the business patterns of Untappd, and trying to identify ways in which we could further innovate the company by understanding the patterns that exist or the patterns that we could then create for moving forward. We initially looked at the long trail pattern, the multi-sided pattern, and free as a business pattern. We ultimately decided to utilize pieces of the multi-sided pattern and free as a business pattern because we've identified the relationship between the breweries and the users as something we could move forward with. In essence, they generate value toward each other. So the more that the breweries interact with Untappd, the more value that's generated for the users. The more the users utilize Untappd and create data is the more value created for the breweries. So on slide 9, we discuss some of the points that have come together from both the multi-sided and the free as a business model, because we realize if we remove some of the barriers from price and create additional value for the breweries, we can then in turn create more value for the users. So by examining the patterns, we've identified the value that we know we want to further create for Untappd into the later sections of the project. On slide 10, the group took everything we did from the business model patterns, and we created a new business model canvas. You can see from the chart we have everything that was like from the original canvas, or at least the previous one, was in blue, and anything we created new as part of the patterns research was labeled as pink as part of the reinvention. With all of the ideas of generating value and within that relationship of the breweries and the users, we created this new category in revenue streams called super craft beer enthusiasts, or super users as we will refer to them throughout the project. And the idea here is that we create value for the users that will create a monthly subscription that will generate more revenue for Untappd. We do this by creating more value for the breweries, and this is where the free model pattern comes into play, is that we realize that the price for the data analytics might be a little too high for the breweries, and it would be our job to find like what is the optimal price to attract the breweries to become part of the Untappd network, creating more value for the users, but still worth the brewery's value. And other things we would need to do is create direct sales opportunities. So we talk about that in a couple of sections, where the breweries would now be able to directly sell to super users is the idea. And super users would have this exclusive access to new releases and events. And again, this all comes down to the idea, going back to the why, of creating this connection. So not only are we connecting people through Untappd, but we're also connecting now users to breweries at a deeper level. As we've introduced new ideas to the business model canvas, it really affects all of the other sections. As we think about opening up direct sales opportunities, we know that'll affect our key activities, our cost structure. So we've highlighted those pieces again in pink. At this point, I would like to introduce Shannon Ames. And she will be taking you through the research that we did for our business model environment portion of the project.
Thanks, Mike. After adapting our business model canvas a few times, the next step was to develop a further understanding of our environment. We did this by looking at 4 main areas: market forces, key trends, industry forces, and macroeconomics. As a team, we completed our research and documented our findings, as well as our references in a Word document. What you're seeing here are the highlights of our extensive work. One question being asked in the industry is the market saturated? Current market forces tell us that while craft beer is currently making up 11% of its market share, it is anticipated to nearly double by 2020. We also saw that new consumers are emerging and becoming craft beer drinkers, such as the millennials, young women, and Hispanics. We learned that the current craft beer drinker wants more knowledge, more diversity, and quality in what they are drinking. It looks as if there are few industry forces that will stop the momentum of craft beer. We did recognize an opportunity to possibly grow our business model towards the flavored whiskeys, as they are on the rise. However, after considering what Mike presented on ideal ways to grow, we decided that staying within the realm of the beer app would make the most sense for our model at this time. Now back over to you, Mike.
On slide 12, we are covering some of the new ideas that we've introduced to Untappd. It's based off of the research and previous discussions. We've already introduced the In the Know super user, which is the subscription base for users to evolve into. But we've just labeled out in more detail some of the ideas. We've talked about the brewery releases and direct sales opportunities. We've also introduced the idea of beer trading portal. Through our research. We've found that beer trading is becoming very popular, and it's kind of based around the challenge of not being able to ship beers from state to state. But Untappd could actually verify users, so we feel like we could add some value for the super users in this way. It's like providing a forum for verified users to become almost like beer pen pals. So we've also added some new ideas for the entry levels, because we realize that we want to bring in more traffic into Untappd, and we've identified new users in the areas of women's from 21 to 35, millennials, and Hispanics. through some of our research, and we were coming up with some new ways to attract users, and realizing that some of the barrier of beer is that people don't feel comfortable of their knowledge of beer. So we thought we would create something around like, a beginner's guide to beer, where it's almost like, education within the different categories and styles. And we've had these ideas of like gamification, and we know we have to watch our responsibility in this piece, and we'll actually cover it in some of our later ideas within the corporate responsibility page. But introducing like scavenger hunts, whereas like people are looking for like a new release or a new beer or something like that. It's like giving a task challenge, and it kind of plays in even to like the badges that are already worked within Untappd. So these are just some of the ideas, but you can see from what we have on the page the full new innovations that we're trying to introduce. On slide 13, this diagram that we put together is describing in detail the revenue generation that Untappd will now be able to, with the new ideas, bring into the company. And it's really this like pattern, and again, it's like following this relationship between the users and the breweries. So if you start with the craft beer enthusiasts, we're trying to bring in more traffic through some of the new features that we've introduced. On the second stage, you have the breweries, and by finding what is that optimal price. Right now, we have like approximately $1,000 a year. We'll have to figure out like what is the optimal price for that. But have breweries actually paying to be part of the network. It will help cover some of the initial costs of the IT infrastructure necessary to maintain the app, and then they also will now have the ability to sell exclusive releases. And we've identified that as being like the middleman, that Untappd could basically take some of the percentage of every sale, whatever that percentage would be. We would have to again figure that out. But we see revenue coming in from that piece of it. And then we've also, because we've generated now value for the breweries, we've created this in the super users. So we'll be generating revenue from a monthly subscription. Again, this will be a great way to generate sustained revenue over time, and just being low monthly costs shouldn't be too much of a barrier for the users to want to jump into this next level. And what we've had throughout the entire, and we haven't changed this too much, is Untappd's ability. So in section 4 here, for Untappd's ability to work with bars, restaurants, and festivals to as like ad promotions for new beers on tap or new events and things like that. So again, it actually circles back to generating revenue or generating value for the craft beer enthusiasts, which then would just kind of continue to complete the circle here.
Mike, thanks for the insight on the prototypes. The next step will be to take the information to the customer. In order to understand a bit more about the customers, we created empathy maps and personas. The first is beer guy Brian. He is our craft beer enthusiast. He is in his early 50s and is married with 2 older children. He wakes up each morning to coffee brewing in the kitchen that was made by his wife. He drinks his coffee black and thinks that anyone who drinks their coffee with cream and sugar is missing out on the best part of the morning. He's not an emotional man, but family is very important to him. He has household responsibilities that he takes very seriously. He has many liberal viewpoints, but is interested in hearing others' opinions. He dreams that one day he will be retired with his wife, but worries that he hasn't put enough money aside to do so. He has an incredibly busy schedule and enjoys discussing new beers with friends and families. He is most happy when he gets a few minutes to himself to check out the latest and greatest in the beer aisle. Now let's look at our new user, Millennial Megan. She's 25 years old. She just recently graduated from a professional program and has started her first job in the city. She lives away from her family and 2 other roommates. She's always wanting to try new things, but is hesitant when not around people she knows. She has her own fashion sense, but often will follow the crowd she is in that day. She misses her family and friends at home, but is excited for all the new adventures and opportunities ahead. Eating healthy and going to the gym is very important to her. She frequently goes to happy hour to hang with friends. She would like to find a great guy one day that she can share all of her new adventures. Now that we understand a bit more about the mindset of our customers, it was time to elicit feedback from them on our prototype. We were able to reach out to 4 specific customer segments: female and male millennials, industry experts, and craft beer enthusiasts. Knowing that the millennials like to hang at happy hour, what better place to form a focus group and talk about beer? We conducted 2 separate focus groups, knowing that we would hear different wants and needs from each gender. Questions were prepared by the group ahead of time, as well as the prototype was present as a visual to help facilitate discussion. Once the people saw and heard about the focus group, they all wanted to talk about Untappd. This opened the door to one-on-one conversations with craft beer enthusiasts and an industry expert from Sly Fox Brewery. We still wanted to be sure we captured the craft beer enthusiast mindset, and so knowing the time constraints on this group, we chose to create a survey monkey to send out. We also wanted to be sure to gain more knowledge on the industry, so an email was sent to another larger brewery with questions to help give us a better sense of their thoughts surrounding Untappd. Our group also had the unique opportunity to look at our segments in different geographical areas. So interviews were conducted with Florida tourists, beer purchasers, and bartenders about the usability and adaptability of Untappd. After gathering all the data, the information was synthesized and presented to our group. Some takeaway points to consider about our business model was that the millennials really love free things. They will use apps and play games if there is some type of incentive for a free offering. One common finding from current users and soon-to-be new users is they both wanted the job of the app to recommend their next beer. The females liked the idea of a taste profile, while the craft beer enthusiasts wanted this to happen through the beer history and ratings. The industry experts liked the idea of selling their beer through the app to a local audience and wanted to be able to control their own beer list through Untappd. They both felt they didn't need analytics piece from Untappd because they could obtain this information themselves. It is important to note that the industry experts we talked to worked in larger breweries with an infrastructure and marketing teams. This feedback opens up opportunities for us to create different levels of partnerships to meet the needs of the smaller breweries needing analytics, as well as the larger breweries that want to be part of Untappd in a different capacity. Now that we have heard from the customer, it is time to revisit our business model canvas. As a team, we discussed what changes needed to occur, and here are the latest variations to the model. Rather than going over the details here, we'll move on to the visual representation on the next slide.